is CGTN, China Global Television Network.
After nearly 2 months of battling the novel coronavirus, China's efforts are bearing fruit. 4 provinces have lowered their response measures this week, and the focus now is on economic recovery. The World Health Organization characterized China's response to the outbreak as a world standard in emergency response. And President Xi Jinping stressed unremitting efforts in the prevention and control of the disease and coordinated efforts in advancing economic development. On this special edition of Talk Africa, we sit down with His Excellency Wu Peng, China's ambassador to Kenya, to give us his thoughts on the virus, lessons China has learned in containing it, and steps being taken towards economic recovery. I'm Beatrice Marshall. Welcome to Talk Africa. Honorable Ambassador, thank you very much for giving us your time. Let's talk about the latest with the COVID-19, with the coronavirus. Now, the conversation is slightly starting to change. The focus now is on economic recovery. We have seen industries starting to perform again. We have seen airlines beginning to resume flights from China. Assess for us the overall impact of the epidemic on the Chinese economy.
I cannot deny the impact of this epidemic to China's economy is relatively huge. I cannot deny that. But it all depends on when we can control the diseases. The good news is now we have a very impressive progress. So, having said that, I believe the outbreak will have a temporary and limited economic effects. But it won't change the country's sound long-term economic fundamentals. Such sectors as service, trade may be affected for the time being. But the consumption and the market demand is not disappearing, and maybe it will bounce back very strongly. We will see a surge of these types of consumption after the end of the break. Even in the short term, the epidemic does not cause the merely negative effect on economy, but it has benefited such industries as a lot of online, for example, online shopping, online education, communication, entertainment, and smart manufacturing. I believe the strong resilience and potential of the Chinese economy cannot be underestimated.
All right, so when we talk about the impressive recovery, it has been a very impressive recovery for the Chinese economy here. What is China's recovery strategy in terms of the measures that are being put in place to rejuvenate the economy?
I think Chinese government had a very clear strategy as President Xi Jinping stressed on this Sunday, that on one hand the CPC committee and the governments of China at all levels should continue the unremitting epidemic prevention and control efforts. We must still focus on that. On the other hand, we should resume work and production in an orderly manner. Efforts should be made to fulfill and unleash the huge potential and powerful driving forces of China's development and strive to achieve the goals and the tasks for economic and social development this year. China has taken a lot of measures to hasten the resumption of industrial production. The central government recently worked out policy combination. The policy include cutting taxation, increasing feasible expenditure, injecting liquidity into the financial system, cutting interest rates, reducing administrative exemptions, examinations and approval producings. In a single word, maybe we should use the word as deregulation. This will help enterprises battle labor and raw material shortages and insufficient funds as they resume work. Currently, in the case of urgently needed medical productive goods, I think you already noticed that the production rate has expanded to 110% of normal levels. I can also share with you some figures in China. More than 70% of major industrial companies in Jiangsu, Shandong, Fujian, Liaoning, Guangzhou, etc. has resumed production. And I heard that the ratio exceeded 90% in Jiangsu.
China is Africa's largest trade partner since 2010. What do you see as the impact of China's slowdown on Africa's economy?
China's relationship with Africa is very close. So if China cannot resume production as early as possible, I think definitely Africa's economic will affect. But I have the confidence. The good news is in the whole Southern Sahara African country, there is no confirmed cases yet. And in China, the situation is gradually getting better. You know, out of Hubei province, the newly confirmed cases is lowered to a very low level. That is a very encouraged message. So I have the confidence. The impact is very limited about Africa's economic growth this year.
So in terms of international solidarity, because we know the UN Secretary General called for international solidarity with China during the epidemic, what is your assessment of the international community's response to China?
Oh, yes, I think we have some figures that in the past several weeks, more than 170 countries head of states, including His Excellency President Uhuru Kenyatta, President of Kenya, already signed condolences letters to Chinese President Xi Jinping. And over 40 heads of the United Nations, African Union, and other international organizations have written to President Xi as well, of course, and other Chinese leaders, or issued statements to show support. Nearly 70 embassies and missions in China expressed their support by publicly posting message, video clips, letters, and pictures as social media. Several recently concluded Africa Union Council meeting and the health ministers meeting all expressed their solidarity with China in the efforts against this virus. This valuable support and help by African in times of adversity is a perfect demonstration of a community with a shared future for mankind. Kenya government and many Kenyan people are continuing expressing their good wishes, encourage and support. I wish to convey my sincere thanks through your CGTN to those lovely brothers and sisters in Kenya. Thank you.
Right, Ambassador Wu, I want to come back to China's position again and talk more about Chinese government efforts to contain the epidemic, because the World Health Organization actually talked about China's response as having set the global standards in terms of response mechanisms. Give us a breakdown of exactly how the Chinese government responded to the epidemic.
Oh yes, maybe a long story, but I try my best, very briefing, okay? Since the outbreak, China has gone all out to fight the diseases. The speed, intensity, and coverage of China's response have been unprecedented in the world. We can put these very comprehensive series of measures into 4 points. First, setting up a unified principle and leadership. The guiding principle as place people's life, security, and health above anything else, above economic recovery. It's most important to fight as one. An interagency prevention and control task force has been set up, which working efficiently to make sure all urgent issues are resolved quickly. Second, mobilizing a people's war. This is a word in our Chinese traditional political. The entire nation has been mobilized. Experts, medical teams, engineers, construction workers, and many more have been deployed to the worst hit area, Wuhan. Funds, money, supplies, policies have been allocated and implemented urgently and orderly. Third, fighting with scientific measures. The most capable experts of China and around the world are racing against the time to develop treatment methods and prevention measures. Medical institutions all over China and around the world are doing their very best to increase the cure rate, reduce infection rate, and mortality rate. Fourth, acting with openness and transparency. I know many international community concerned about this. The Chinese authority update the date and the situation every day, meanwhile sharing with the international committees. Myself and the embassy based in Nairobi also has kept close touch with government of Kenya on the prevention and control of the virus. The embassy also continuously monitored the entry of Chinese nations into Kenya and have required all Chinese nationals coming back from China to quarantine themselves at home for 14 days, even they have no symptoms. The series of measures are already taken effect significantly. Newly confirmed cases and fatality, excluding Hubei province, has been declined to very low level.
Let me get some lessons from you, Ambassador Wu, because why has this been different? Why has this response, the particular response to coronavirus, been singled out as a mechanism, been singled out for praise by international people?
Oh, I think China has adopted the most comprehensive, rigorous, and thorough measures and established an effective prevention and control system which has lowered the epidemic peak, weakened its intensity, and brought it under control. Just as Dr. Bruce Alworth, at the head of the WHO delegation to China, put it, I quote, "The approach of all of government and all of society is very old-fashioned and has averted and properly prevented at least tens of thousands, even hundreds of thousands cases under court." This kind of comments is very impressive. Even to me, I believe we Chinese are much more pragmatic. We work very hard for it. The WHO Director General also said that he has given credit where it's due. I think this answer is a simple but good response to your question.
Ambassador Wu Peng, stay with us. Our conversation continues in a moment. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, we'll have more on recovering from the novel coronavirus. Don't go away.
Life moves pretty fast. Ideas move at the speed of sound. Technology moves at the speed of light. If you don't filter out the noise, you might miss the details. We pay attention to the details because they matter, showing you a different perspective. See the difference.
Now, before the break, we looked at what China is doing to ensure its economic recovery. Well, let's now look at how it responded to the outbreak and what lessons have been learned from it. Ambassador, let's look at some examples here, because when it comes to epidemics, it is not confined to one community or one region. Africa itself had its share of the Ebola virus in 2014, and you have been a former ambassador to Sierra Leone, so you know what the Sierra Leonean people went through. What is your assessment of Africa's readiness in general, and Kenya's in particular, when it comes to the epidemic?
Yes, I was a former ambassador to Sierra Leone. When I was based in Freetown, the epidemic of Ebola has been passed, but I can still feel the very, very deep impact to that country and the people. So the WHO declared the epidemic a public health emergency of international concern because of concern on the potential for the virus to spread to countries with weaker health system and which are ill prepared to deal with it. We, of course, notice of that. As the ambassador to Kenya, I don't have accurate observes on other African countries, but I worked closely with the government of Kenya, including Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Health, Transport, on the prevention and control of the virus. Frankly to say, I think Kenya did a good job. They relatively well prepared, and they are working very hard to prevent the virus possibility to spread. So government of Kenya is doing the job seriously. They are taking actions to be ready and effectively respond to any imported outbreak. I think these measures include strengthening surveillance at all points of entry, improving diagnostic capacity at the laboratory. Now Kenya can check the coronavirus in Kenya, establishing coordinating committees at both policy and technical levels, and training of healthcare staff on prevention, early detection, and management of suspected confirmed cases.
All right, so we know that from your indications, Kenya is quite prepared when it comes to epidemic control. What does Africa, though, if you can give us a view here, what does Africa need, and in which ways do you see that China can help countries, particularly those with weaker health systems, to manage?
I actually discussed this issue with our Kenya friends as well. I think epidemics are enemy of human being. All nations should unite to prevent the spread of diseases on the basis of scientific facts. I would suggest that all countries must follow the guidance of the WHO, because they are the specialist agency, which is working closely with global experts, governments, and partners to rapidly expand scientific knowledge on the virus. Do not forget that this virus, coronavirus, is new. We know very limited about it. So to track the spirit of the virus and to prevent, advise on measures for health and prevention. China also ready to work with African countries, help each other, provide help within our capacity to prevent this virus spreading in around the world.
Right. So let's talk about, Ambassador Wu, let's talk about one factor that has been a disadvantage during the epidemic, and that has been a deliberate campaign of disinformation. Even though there has been a platform of openness and transparency from Chinese authorities, from the World Health Organization, from the UN, we have seen quite a bit of disinformation being waged by some quarters to belittle the efforts that the Chinese government is making towards controlling the epidemic. How damaging has the disinformation been?
That is the most part I concern. I think coronavirus has been hitting headlines in many countries, media including Kenya's. Many of these reports offered objective information and reasonable analysis. We very appreciate of that. However, there are also some misinformation and rumors. These rumors are more threatening than the virus itself. Sometimes I say like this: openness, confidence, and determination are of vital importance in overcoming the epidemic. So we always have as one of our basic principles, stick to openness and transparency. We believe openness and transparency will give people more confidence, will give them more awareness about the virus. What are the real risks and how to prevent them? The Chinese authority are providing all the figures on a daily basis, as I said moments ago. So at this issue, talking about this issue, I do hope that Kenya public, if I fully understand that they are worries about the spirit of this virus, but if they have any question or they have any concern related to China, our embassy are very ready to communicate with them, to tell, to commute the information with the public of Kenya.
So you have talked about the embassy here and what and how open the embassy has been in terms of giving the information to avoid misinformation. Talk to us a little bit more about what the Chinese government has done to ensure that all stakeholders have the relevant information so that this issue of misinformation is dealt with.
I think that is why I already said that Chinese government issued press release about the numbers of affected, confirmed or suspected patient, this kind of information daily. And at the same time, our central government news agents also have a press release conference almost every day, not only in central government, but also provincial government as well. So this kind of transparency, I think we try our best to provide. But you know, at the very beginning, in Wuhan and Hubei province, there are a lot of challenge. So it's a little bit hard to figure out the figures and the situation is very challenging. But the situation is getting better gradually because now we are doing good job to control the diseases. We have more capacity to, you know, deal with the public relationship with the people around the world.
I want to get another comment from you, Ambassador Wu, regarding perceptions, because I mentioned earlier about Ebola, and when we talked about Ebola, everybody thought it was an African problem. And now when we talk about coronavirus, you know, there has been perceptions put to where or what coronavirus, where it started from. What are your thoughts when it comes to these sorts of perceptions, linking epidemics or linking diseases to certain communities? What are your thoughts on that?
I think this kind of allocate some kind of diseases to some targeted people or geography area is totally wrong. We may recall that after the Ebola outbreak, some country was the first to evacuate their nationals and closed its embassies in the affected African countries. You know, I was once based in Sierra Leone, I know it. In contrast, all the Chinese diplomats, experts, and some companies had stayed there to fight side by side with local governments and people against Ebola to the end. Coronavirus is not China virus, just as Ebola is not African virus. Virus do not respect a nation or religion. Virus is virus, is the enemy of all humankind. We all know the novel coronavirus is posing a global threat to the health of human beings. It calls for international concentrated efforts to win the battle, not just to put fingers to each other. It doesn't work. We believe that this is the battle between the humanity and nature. Discrimination and prejudice at this crucial time can only do harm to the global battle and very, very bad for the people. For the well-being of mankind, we shall take concentrated actions and support each other and join hands together to build a better world and a better community with a shared future for mankind.
Do you see that there is a need for more solidarity and collaboration when it comes to
so far so
outbreaks?
good. I think so far so good, especially because I'm based in Nairobi. I mean, we can strongly feel the solidarity from African countries and from many developing countries. Of course, also from our many neighbor countries, we very, very appreciate. And we have the confidence in today's situation. I mean, the virus already a little bit outbreak in some other countries. We need solidarity even more than in the past. We should do that.
All right, Excellency, I want to get a final comment from you. What would be your message to the Kenyan public regarding the epidemic? What would be your message to the public?
My message is very simple. First of all, I thank you, Kenya government and the Kenyan people very, very much for your solidarity and support to Chinese government and the Chinese people. You know, it is a tough time. It's a very difficult time. We really, really cherished your friendship and support. And of course, China is also ready to work with Kenya's side to prevent the virus spirit around the world. Thank you very much.
Ambassador Wu, thank you very much. And that's all we have time for this week on Talk Africa. But a big thank you to my guest, His Excellency Wu Peng, China's ambassador to Kenya. Now remember, we'd love to hear your feedback through our social media handles on Facebook and Twitter. You can also catch the program on our YouTube playlist to keep the conversation going, and tune in again next week for more Talk Africa. From me, Beatrice Marshall, and the team here in Nairobi, it's goodbye.